They gave me a form when I woke up. Single sheet, gray, printed in 3 scripts. Only one of them was human standard, and even that column had a font I hadn't seen before. I filled in my name, my discipline, my last verified posting. Under duration of suspension, I wrote 15 years, 4 months, 11 days. The intake officer, a tall Keth Sorvani with amber ridge crests that pulsed softly each time she processed a new piece of information, took the form back and looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at me. "That cannot be correct," she said. "It's in the cryo log," I said. "You can pull it." She pulled it. Her ridge crests went a color I'd never seen before and never saw again. I should explain the situation. 15 years ago, I was the lead preservation engineer on a deep survey station 4 light-years out from the nearest relay point. The station took damage, not catastrophic, but close enough that 6 of us went into emergency cryo-suspension while the automated systems handled what they could. The plan was a 6-month sleep while the repair drones worked. What no one accounted for was that the drones would patch the hull in the wrong sequence, seal the cryo bay exit from the outside, and then quietly run nominal status reports for 15 years while we slept behind a wall they had accidentally made permanent. A salvage crew found us. They cut through the seal, read our vitals, and determined we were stable. Then they delivered us to the nearest facility with intake processing capacity, which happened to be the Dreneth Advanced Sciences Annex, an institution I had never heard of. For personnel, I was categorically not. The salvage crew filed the transfer paperwork. The annex's intake system accepted it automatically. So that is how I ended up sitting in a classification pod at the Dreneth Advanced Sciences Annex intake hall, wearing clothes that were 15 years out of date, and feeling, honestly, not too bad. Cold. Still. The kind of cold that lives in your joints for weeks after cryo. But not bad. The intake hall ran the length of a long corridor. Individual pods spaced every 3 meters on both sides, small chambers, glass on 3 walls, an assessment seat in the center of each. The pods were occupied by what I assumed were the normal intake cohort, young adults mostly, in the uniforms of whatever academies or programs had sent them. They sat straight. They looked alert in the careful way of people who know they are being measured. I sat the way I always sit after a long cryo cycle, which is slightly forward, elbows on knees, letting my spine decompress at its own pace. Veldrath, the Keth Sorvani intake assessor who had taken my form, closed the pod door and stood outside the glass. I could see her ridge crests cycling through standard amber. She had the kind of bearing that comes from running a process so many times that the process has become structural, confident in the way that a machine is confident. The Solvrin classification grid has processed 11,214 intake subjects over 200 years of continuous operation, she said, not just to me, but to the corridor. It has not returned an incomplete result in that time. Please remain still while the sequence runs. I remained still. I am good at that. The first pass was biometric. I know this because I could feel the scan moving across my skin. A faint pressure variation, like a change in altitude. It ran head to toe and back. Normal duration on a standard subject, I was told later, is about 40 seconds. On me, it ran for 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Then it paused. Veldrath checked her display. Her ridge crests flickered. The second pass was neural, a resonance read looking for oscillation patterns that map to cognitive tier. I know this because I have read the literature on Solvrin systems, from back when I was doing graduate work in applied cryogenics. Neural oscillation slows substantially in long-term cryo. It doesn't stop, but it shifts into a register the body uses to maintain just enough function to stay viable. 15 years of that, and your baseline is not what any standard instrument expects to find. The neural pass ran for 6 minutes. Then it paused. The third pass was metabolic. Core temperature, caloric processing rate, respiration rhythm. 15 years in cryo-suspension will bring your core temperature down by several degrees and hold it there. The body learns a new floor. It doesn't go back up fully for weeks after revival, sometimes longer. I was, at the time of assessment, running about 2 degrees below what the instrument considered the lower boundary of a viable metabolic reading for any known species. The metabolic pass ran for 4 minutes, then it stopped entirely. Outside the pod, Veldrath had stopped moving. Her ridge crests had gone to a color I would describe as pale gray, though I am not certain that color was in her normal range. She was staring at her display with the absolute stillness of someone who has encountered something that does not fit inside any category they have ever used. She made a call. A specialist arrived. Another Keth Sorvani, this one older, with the bearing of someone who maintains the instrument rather than merely operates it. He looked at the display. He looked at me. He ran a diagnostic on the grid itself, which took 11 minutes. The grid returned nominal function across all systems. He ran the sequence again from the beginning. The biometric pass stalled at the same point. The neural pass returned the same inconclusive register. The metabolic pass hit the same floor and stopped. By this point, several of the cadets in the adjacent pods had noticed something was happening. You could not hear anything through the glass, but you could see it. The two Keth Sorvani standing outside my pod, the specialist running the same sequence twice. The display that both of them kept looking at and then looking away from. I used the time to stretch my back. 15 years in a cryo couch is not good for the lumbar. The specialist ran one final pass, a threat index scan, which I understand uses a different sensory array, one calibrated for behavioral and physiological markers associated with aggression potential. My understanding is, it works primarily on adrenaline derivatives and certain neural patterns associated with threat response. I do not produce much adrenaline at baseline on a good day. After 15 years of enforced metabolic suppression, I produce close to none. The threat index scan returned a result. One number, 0. The specialist set down his calibration tool. Veldrath looked at the display for a long time. Then she pressed the door release on my pod and stood in the opening. The grid has returned no classification, she said. In 200 years, this has not occurred. I know, I said. I read the plaque in the corridor. Her ridge crests moved. I think it was the color for a category she was trying to build in real time. What are you? She asked. Not unkindly. Genuinely. I thought about that for a moment. 15 years is a long time to sleep, but it is not a long time to think. You are not conscious in cryo, not exactly. And yet there is something the body does in that suspended dark, some long, slow settling, that changes the answer to a question like that one. An engineer, I said, who needed a very long sleep. She looked at me. Her ridge crest cycled through 3 colors in about 2 seconds. I couldn't read any of them. The grid's file will remain open, she said finally. There is no classification to assign. That's fine, I said. You will need to be assigned to a program while the administrative error is corrected. Also fine, I said. Is there somewhere I can get a coffee? Cold cabin, long morning. Veldrath's ridge crests went still. The specialist behind her made a sound I did not have a translation for. I got the coffee. It was not good coffee. The annex ran on something that tasted like hot mineral water with ambition. But it was warm, and warm was what I needed. The grid's file on me was flagged open/no result for 11 months, while the administrative correction worked its way through the system. During that time I was assigned, provisionally, to the Applied Systems program, where I fixed 3 pieces of equipment that had been listed as non-functional for between 2 and 7 years. Nobody had asked me to. The components were adjacent to my provisional workspace, and the faults were obvious. Veldrath filed a supplemental notation on the open file for each one. I don't know what she wrote. She never told me, and I didn't ask. When the administrative correction finally came through, and the salvage transfer was unwound, I was returned to the engineering division that had lost me 15 years prior. They had declared me deceased after year 3. The paperwork to undo that took longer than the paperwork to fix the cryo bay. The grid's file was closed without a result. Still the only one, as far as I know. I didn't mind. Some things don't need a category. They just need time.